Vasquez is a life and leadership coach with a 20-year background as a human resource executive in a variety of industries and global roles. Her talk today is going to be the 6 derailers. She's not talking about a bicycle. It is the most common initial screen questions hindering job seekers from progressing and what needs to be said. She is a certified professional coach and has many other certifications as well. Her experience includes holding director and vice president roles in Fortune 500, world-class organizations, and startup firms. Metha's areas of expertise include talent acquisition and talent development across diverse cultures and backgrounds. She has served on for-profit and nonprofit boards, dedicating much of the last 20 years to helping others in the community. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science degree in Hotel and Restaurant Management from the University of Houston. She obtained her master's degree in business from Keller Graduate School of Management of DeVry University. She holds 2 National Human Resources certifications. She is officially a senior professional in human resources. She has her SPHR. She also has a Society for HR Management Senior Certified Professional. So she's got her SHRM-SCP, and she has a global certification as well, GPHR, Global Professional of HR. Her areas of expertise, did I say this already? She has, oh yeah, there we are. She is also a certified career coach, and her career development and job search coaching practice focuses on helping directors, VPs, and HR leaders get their next high-paying and career-forwarding job quickly. I apologize for butchering that, but we are very excited about having her here. She is also one of the SWAT team leads. And so for any of you who are interested in joining a SWAT team, you might be able to work one-on-one with Metha. Let's give a very warm welcome to Metha Vasquez.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just odd listening to your own bio, but thank you very much. Okay. A couple of things. Feel free to get out your phone. You can actually use the QR code on the screen, take a picture, and connect with me on LinkedIn right now. I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about it. You will be able to use your phone throughout the presentation. There'll be opportunities to be very, very interactive. My name is Metha Vasquez, and my primary job is I work with job seekers one-on-one with their resume, their LinkedIn, their career plan, their interview practice, finding leads, finding contacts in companies, salary negotiation, and onboarding. So really the whole work stream of your job search. And this will be very interactive. So there'll be times you'll see where I'll ask you to chime in on the chat. And depending on the time, we will also have an opportunity for you to come on the screen. We'll be right at an hour. I'm looking at my clock. It's 10:45. So we'll try to be done by about 10:35, 10:40, 11:35, 11:40. And I am a SWAT team leader. I have been a SWAT team leader with Launchpad for about 7 or 8 months. And I'm very, very happy with that. We have people getting jobs like at least every other week in my SWAT. So that's excellent news. Today's talk is what everything in my practice comes, and you will see, I self-develop, but the 6 derailers are questions that I see that people fall flat on in the initial screen. So I'm going to show you how to answer these better so that you can get past the screener. Okay, so some logistics. I would prefer that you keep your camera on. I didn't know there was 35 people in here, so that's not mandatory, but do keep your mute on, okay? And that's because we're recording. You may have a dog barking in the back. Your doorbell may ring. Keep your mute on until unless I call on you. but it's not mandatory for the camera because we have so many people. You will see QR codes all throughout this presentation. I am totally fine with you taking pictures. If there's, I will even tell you, hey, this is a good slide to take a picture. Right there, you can go ahead and go on the QR code. So there'll be a lot of that. There will be a call to action in the end, which means that, it's great to go to a training. And I know as job seekers, you're probably going to a lot of trainings, but you need to follow up on the training. So there will be at the end, like things that you need to do to move forward. We will have also takeaways at the end. So this will be a participation slide. So be thinking now about, what even on the next slide, what you want to take away. Also, this is confidential. I know this is recorded, but I want you to know that if you will need to ask a confidential question, feel free. We're not here to, bash an employer, or but you could have had a bad experience or something. So we want you to feel open to ask that. And then on participation, you will see this bubble on a slide. And if you see this bubble on the slide, that means that when I finish that slide, there will be participation and activity on that slide. It could be in the chat, or I could ask you to come on screen. So anytime you see that bubble, it is a participation slide. All right, so what do I want you to walk away with today? I want you to know different areas of your search that could possibly derail you, okay? So I'm going to give you metrics in here on where you can determine if your search is off track, okay? Because then you need to make a decision if you want to do something differently. The number one thing I tell people in this is that you are making assumptions all over the place, and you need to be very careful that those are not derailing your process, okay? So I'm going to tell a little bit about my background. Kathy talked about my background, and I'm not going to go through all of these bullet points, but I have hired 20,000 people in corporate America. So I started recruiting in 1992, and I have led teams of 50, 60 recruiters as well. So I have hired a lot of people. I tell you this so that you know that I know what it takes to get through the process, okay? Again, this has a bubble on there, so I'm going to ask you after I finish my story what stands out. Okay, so several years ago, I was laid off. Okay. But it was the second time I was laid off. I was working for an organization, and the company sold. I was the head of HR. The company sold, and they came in and they laid me off because the HR person at the company that we sold, that bought us, took the job. So I pretty much found a job right away. Like within 3 weeks, I found a job. I went, and this next job, I was the head of recruiting and learning and development. And after about a year, they filed for bankruptcy. And then once we filed for bankruptcy, we had the rounds and rounds of layoffs, like every 60 days. I was not affected until like the 5th round of layoffs, but then I was ultimately affected. And so I kind of saw this coming. So I started looking for a job. I was laid off in September of 2016. I want you to pay attention to this timeline because this is crucial to part of the story. So I was laid off, not my fault of my own. Like I told you, tons of layoffs over time in September of 2016. I was actually getting 1 or 2 job interviews a month. Okay, so I was okay with that. I was, actually getting interviews 1 or 2 a month. Then by January, I was wondering why I was not really progressing in the interview process. Okay, I really was starting to question. It's been 4 months, and I've had like 1 or 2 phone screens a month, and I'm not progressing. So I really started to question. I was starting to have self-doubt. I was starting to, look at my street cred. I'm like, well, what is this street cred not worth anything? What is going on? One day I was crying in my car by myself because I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I called one of my executive coaches. I was very fortunate earlier in my career to have had an executive coach. So I called him up and he really told me he couldn't help me. He didn't like specialize in that. So he referred me to a life coach. What you need to remember about this story is I told you I've hired 20,000 people before, and I'm having trouble getting past the gatekeeper. Okay. So I called this life coach. I had 1 or 2 sessions with her and very upset, still crying, why I'm like getting interviews and I'm not going further. So she basically tells me, you need to go to therapy. It's like something, I can't help you. So I had a therapist. I hadn't used him in years, so I went to therapy. Okay. So now we're like in May or June. Okay. We're like 8 and 9 months into my unemployment. Unemployment is done. Okay. I have no unemployment left. I'm blowing through savings every month. I'm still getting phone interviews, but I'm not getting hired. So I worked with my therapist, and she was not really qualified to help me understand, why I wasn't interviewing well, but I did work with her. I eventually got a job in October of 2017, so that's 13 months. I took a job with a lot less pay. I took a job that I really didn't want, and I settled, but they offered me a job. So I'm not trying to depress you, but I'm trying to tell you what I've been through. So in the chat, please tell me what stands out about my story. Anything that you learned from my story.
I learned that you're very resilient, persevering through soul-crushing odds.
Oh my goodness. Okay. What have I learned about my job search?
Not getting to the right person to help, being tossed around from one coach to another, that it's very similar to many of our members.
Yes, yes, yes.
Even the professional recruiter can have problems with recruiters. You work during a booming time to hire 20,000 people, reaching out to a mentor. Even the most qualified professionals can face the same inner struggles that the way less qualified job seekers can face. Coaches are not always so helpful.
This honesty, thank you so much. All right, I'm gonna let Kathy stop reading. I'm gonna go on. But this is very awesome. Okay, so all right, so you need to take a picture of this. You might want to take a picture after I show the second box. Okay, but part of my story was, remember I said things like, I should be like progressing. Something's not right. But I didn't have any tools to measure how my search was going. Okay, I didn't have any tools. So when I left corporate, 4 years ago to open my practice to do this, now I work on the candidate side, not the company side, is that I'm like, well, I need to know how we're doing in the search process. So one thing I developed is what we call the application ratio. So for every 10 jobs that you apply for, it doesn't matter where, like what portal or what company or whatever, for every 10 jobs, you should be getting at least one phone screen, one initial screen. Okay. If that's not happening, then you are not going to be entered into any processes. Okay. You need to get in what we call inside a process, which is the first step, a screen. Okay. So if that's not happening, you may need one-on-one help, okay? So that's the application ratio. Today, we're going to talk about the interview ratio, because the interview ratio is where I had the problem, okay? I told you I was getting some leads and I was having a couple of phone screens a month, but I wasn't getting hired, okay? So the interview ratio is for every time you make it to the hiring manager, you should advance 3 out of 4 times to the next stage, or a 75% ratio. And let me explain that to you, okay? I'm going to be a recruiter for a second so you can understand that you were already qualified if you made it to the hiring manager. If you made it to the hiring manager, your resume passed muster. They gave you a phone call. You passed muster. If you made it to the hiring manager, the initial screen with the recruiter went okay, right? Like they passed you on to the next step. If the hiring manager accepted an interview with you, that's 3 steps you already made. You see that? You made 3 steps. You are qualified at this point. There's no doubt. You made it through 3 steps. If you're derailing at this point, it's because you're not interviewing effectively. And this, stories like, well, Bob had 5 more years of experience. No, Bob interviewed that. Okay. So that is a little bit about how I measure how you're doing. So I'm going to ask you a question in the chat. So give me ideas. How are you measuring your search progress? How do you know if I'm like on track, not off track? Maybe somebody could give me some creative ideas. So put it in the chat. Oops. Any ways that you're measuring your search progress. Let's see how we're doing that time. Maybe you're not. Okay, let me ask a yes or no question. SWAT team tracking? Yes. If you're in a SWAT team, absolutely. We hold you accountable in a SWAT. Okay, so everybody that let's ask it in a yes or no way. If you have some way that you are measuring how your job search is going, put a Y in there, just a Y. Everybody put a Y that has some. If you don't, then put an N. I'm going to see. Okay, so look, we have people, some N, Y, quite a few Ys. Okay. So these are 2 examples, and I see a lot of Ys here, that you have other ways to measure your search progression. But I point this out so that in case you need to know if you need help, okay? Because I have a client starting every week, okay? And I'm measuring them on this, okay? All right, so now we have true, false, okay? Lots of fun here. All right, so what I want you to do on the true, false is don't put it in the chat, okay? You're going to write it in your notebook, okay? True or false. There's 4 questions. Don't put it in the chat. We're going to do all 4 questions, and then I'm going to have you put TTFFFF, whatever you come up with. So write down your answers for yourself. Don't put it in the chat. Here we go. True or false? First one. The most qualified candidate gets hired. True or false? Write it in your notebook. The most qualified candidate gets hired. True or false? Second question. Interviewers are well trained at assessing talent. Write in your notebook. True or false? Interviewers are well trained at assessing talent. Okay, number 3. In an employer's market, there are many chances to practice interviewing. In an employer's market, there are many chances to practice interviewing. True or false? Write it in your notebook. Last one. Job seekers accurately forecast how long it takes to get hired. True or false? Job seekers accurately forecast how long it takes to get hired. All right. Okay, everybody, put your answers in the chat. I love this part. Just start putting whatever you think. All 4. TTFF. Whoa, we got some Fs. All right, look at that. My quiz was too easy. Okay, so my quiz was too easy. Okay, so I'm going to go through some of these, and then if any of you think that one was tricky, I'll have you ask. Okay, so on number 1, I told you I hired 20,000 people. I can do a phone screen, okay, and think that, Tamika was like the best, most qualified person. Put it onto the hiring manager, and the hiring manager hires their friend. That's a real life thing, okay? So that is false. Not the most qualified candidate gets hired. Number 2, interviewers are well trained at assessing talent. you know, part of the great part of my job is that when I talk to y'all, like, they're like, you would not believe what I would ask. And I'm like, oh yeah, I believe that you were asked that. Okay. So that's false. In employer's market, you'll have many chances to interview. This is crucial. If you are not getting a lot of interviews, then you don't get a lot of chance to practice. You got to be good at the very beginning because they have a lot of candidates and you don't get a lot of chances to practice. Okay. And number four, I'm just trying to think, job seekers accurately forecast. Okay, so you heard my story. I thought I would be employed at the most in 3 or 4 months, and it was 13 months. And I do this with every person that considers hiring me. We build a search timeline, and I would say 90% of the time they're like, holy cow, I did not realize this. Okay. So, all right. So, anybody just put in the chat one that they thought was tricky. And I might call on you. Don't think it's odd, but I might call on you. Anybody want to put number 3? Okay. Anybody else? Any of these ones that were tricky? 2. Okay. We have Stephen and Catherine. Okay. All right, Stephen, if you don't mind coming on, do you mind coming on and telling us why you thought number 3 was somewhat tricky?
Yeah, because I thought if it was an employer's market, that meant they had plenty of people to interview. And so there'd be more opportunities. I guess that was what my thinking was.
I mean, thank you for sharing your perspective. Okay, so let's talk about that. In an employer's market, they do have plenty of choices. They can talk to as many people as they want. Okay, like if they want to screen 10 people, 15 people, they do. But when 500 people apply, you as the candidate get less chances. You see what I'm saying? So in employer's market, there are plenty of candidates. So really the candidate does not get as much practice there. So that's interesting. All right. I think 3, I think there might be plenty of opportunity to interview over the course of 12 months, but maybe not as frequent. Okay. Alan, if you don't mind coming on, can you share your perspective there?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like I get the point you're making, but I have probably interviewed more times in absolute numbers during my current unemployment stint than any other previous shorter stint. So I think, the frequency might be more important than the number, which is how I interpreted your question.
Okay. So yeah, when you say frequency, so you're getting, I don't want to put words in your mouth, many chances to interview. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no, it's many chances per unit of time is the difference that I'm curious about.
Okay, what does that mean then? I want to make sure I understand.
I mean, I've been looking for maybe 6 months, and I think I've had, I don't know, 6 or 7 interviews. And the previous time I was looking for a job, I was unemployed for 4 months, and I think I had maybe 2 or 3 interviews.
Okay.
And
I
I've
see.
had more this time. It's been a harder search, but also fewer per month.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'm sort of being nitpicky about the
Yeah,
question.
that's fine. And I appreciate your feedback. That's good. So that's where we look at your application ratio. Okay, because you said that was a very good example. So how many times you're applying versus how many times that you're actually getting a phone screen. So so it sounds like that you are measuring your progress. Okay, so I'm very impressed you're measuring your progress. So this is very good. I appreciate that. Okay, y'all teach me all the time. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the derailers. So I want you to think about, I'm going to ask you a question at the end, how this is, what brings up from my original story. Okay. So the importance of the beginning of the process. So when I work with people, I talk a lot about getting into the process. Getting into the process means getting a phone screen, okay, or initial interview, whatever you want to call it, phone screen and initial interview. That is getting into the process. So you can apply, you can be referred, but until you have a screening call, you are not inside a process, okay? So what we're talking about is how you get past the screener. You'll hear me say screener, gatekeeper, that kind of thing. That is like how you ford the football. So remember, my story, like I wasn't, moving on. Okay, so the reason I call these derailers is that these are things that I usually see that, and as a recruiter, I found that I would not pass you on. Okay, so I'm going to give you some. So concise. So if you're failing to be concise, which means that you're too wordy, okay, then they like, I was like, oh, you can't tell me in 3 sentences, boom, I'm not talking to you anymore. Okay, that to me is a recruiter. Authentic. Okay, so authentic is what your failure to be authentic. So using a chat GPT response, like, or coached off of an AI tool is not authentic, people. It's not authentic. I get you're getting your advice there, but that's not authentic, okay? That's an internet response. Consistent. So let me mean that. So like you say, in the beginning of the phone screen that you're looking for a growth opportunity. And then they say, oh, well, this is really like a status quo job. And then you say, oh, I'm good with that. Okay. I'm like, oh, like, okay, you don't really know what you want. Okay. Direct. So like not being like saying things in a flowery way. So being, if you're not direct and saying like, I, really wanted to talk to you because I noticed on your website that the quotes from the people that work there were very inspiring. See, like that's direct. Okay. It's said it in 20 seconds. Okay. And failure to align with the position or the company. So, we're looking at my notes. So, like, this happens every day of the week. I say, well, like, why did you apply for this job? Why are you interested in this job? Well, I really think that it would be the next great step for my career. Well, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear like why you align with their opening, like not about you. I know that sounds so crass, but when 500 people apply, they don't really want to hear like about your growth story. They want to hear about how you align. So as I talk about like things that are derailers, put in the chat anything you remember from my story. Is there anything I did wrong in my like interview process before that's sticking out to you? And it's okay, just judge me, that's fine. But Metha, I noticed that when you told your story, you didn't do this. Anything that stands out from my original story that might have derailed me? Oh, settle for a job you didn't want. Oh yes, that's a freaking bummer. What else? Let's pay. Oh, yeah. 13 months, I'm like, I need a paycheck. All right, we'll move on. Let's see. Okay. You were desperate. Thank you. Look, I wasn't interviewing well. I was not interviewing well. So it's kind of like a vicious cycle. After a while, I was already stressed and anxious in an interview. Then when I don't have a paycheck coming in, I'm like interviewing even worse at that point. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is a slide. You can take a picture with your phone if you want. But then you can also, you can do it now, but you can also take a picture, because this is the 6 derailers that I'm going to be talking about. Okay. And one of this is one of my favorite parts of the job, because when I start throwing these questions out to my clients, they like look at me in video and they realize within 20 seconds it was totally off track. Okay. All right. So here we go. So these are the 6 questions that, as a phone screener, I asked almost every single time. Okay. And but I didn't ask them just these ways. Okay. So let me tell you, I will train my clients on this, and they'll say, Metha, they didn't ask me, like, tell me about yourself. And I said, okay, all right. Well, they don't always ask that. And then I go, okay, tell me what they did ask. And they're like, well, one of the questions they asked was, walk me through your resume. I go, that's the same question. Okay, it's the same question. So these questions I have written in like 5 different ways that they'll ask, but they get asked 80 to 90% of the time. Okay. Let me see, I'm writing it down. So, okay, I'm going to tell you a story about this. Tell me about yourself. So I met this lady this week, and this is not an age thing, but I'm going to tell you how much judgment is applied based on when I tell you make assumptions. So this lady that I met this week, she was in her early 60s. It was on video. And very polished, well put together, great resume, good background. And so in this scenario, I said, I didn't say tell me about yourself. I said, give me a brief introduction. See how it's the same thing? And this is what she said. Well, when I went to college, I was going to start studying for this. You know what? At that point, I stopped listening. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, somebody come on the screen right now and tell me why I stopped listening when she said, when I went to college. Zach.
Because she was about to give you a 40-year history on what was ideally asked to be a brief introduction. The time bound was too wide.
Yes. Now, strangely enough, Zach, and thank you for coming on, she did a fabulous job in a minute and a half. But guess what? She had to get it back on track because I stopped listening the first 20 seconds. You see what I'm saying? So she did well, but by that, if I was doing a phone screen, it was all over for you. You see what I'm saying? And I don't even remember the first part of her story because I was like, oh my God, please don't do this to me. Okay. So thank you, Zach, for coming on. Okay. So that's tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume, give me an introduction question. Okay. Okay. So the strengths and weaknesses question, I have clients tell me every week, people don't ask that anymore. I'm like, oh, yes, they do. They ask it in a different way. Okay. So they will say in a phone screen, hey, we're looking for some, Paula just left. And we're looking for somebody who can come in here and learn the software quickly. So yes, you have to know your strengths and weaknesses very concisely before every interview. Or they'll say, you'll ask why the job is open. And they'll say, well, the job is open because the last person we hired, Fred, really couldn't get along with everybody they needed to. Ding, 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 ding. You need to know your strengths. You see what I'm saying? You have to be able to do that. Did they say, Metha, what's your strengths and weaknesses? No, they didn't say that, but you have to know it. Okay. And I'll give you one more, but that's why you need to take a picture of these. Okay. So, the last one is what interested you in the opportunity? Again, it's asked a variety of ways. Why are you talking to us? How did you hear about us? Why might you want to work here? See, it's all the same questions. You have to have an answer to it. So I will get one of my clients on the phone and they'll say, oh, I applied at company, you know, ABC Framing. And I'll be, why? And they'll like, I'm like, well, you're going to fail the phone screen. I'm not saying don't apply for all the jobs that you want, but you have to be concise and talk about them, not you. Like, oh, well, what I noticed about you, ABC Framing, is that you're growing quite a bit. Well, at least that's what I saw on the job description and the website. And so I wanted to apply because at my last company, what I did was I made a project plan to increase framing, you know, by 20%. So I want to get on the phone and talk to you about that. So in that example, it really wasn't about me. I got to share a brief thing, but it was about them. So we have a couple minutes. I know there's not a bubble on this slide, but I want to know if anybody wants to come on and ask me questions about the derailers. Or you can put it in the chat. Let's just take a moment and do that. Okay, look, somebody asked about philosophy. Talk about philosophy. Okay, this is, again, take a picture of this so you know these questions. Okay, so the philosophy question can be asked in a lot of different ways, but if you're in HR, it might be asked what your HR philosophy is. If you're in leadership, it might be asked what your management style is. If you are in an executive position, it might be asked, you know, what's your, how do you run your strategy? But it's basically how, you know, management style, leadership, your value system. That is the question. It's all one question. And my coaching on that is, don't answer like, oh, I'm a servant leader. Now let me explain the whole servant leader thing. I'm a servant leader. And I asked a client, I said, well, did you know that company that you're, you know, interviewing for, that they're Jewish? Well, what does that matter? I'm like, well, that's a Christian concept. Did you do your homework? You see why you can't just say things like that? So what you do is that you go to the website before the company and you look at their mission, vision, and values. They may have 3, 4, 5, or 6. Pick 2. This is where you be authentic. Pick 2. Like maybe they are very innovative, and maybe they are like extremely collaborative. Pick 2, and then you can answer that philosophy question. And they say, well, what is your philosophy on leadership? Well, I really like to, you know, work with my teams to be extremely innovative in a very collaborative way. You see how I said that? So, yeah, I've got interview questions on servant leadership. So yes, so that's the philosophy one. Okay, I'll move on, but I think you kind of got my point there. That was fun. Okay, all right, we have another little exam question here thingy, and then we'll be wrapping up. Okay, so this is an either or. So your bubble, when I'm done with the slide, you have to tell me Frank or Maria. Okay, Frank or Maria. These are 2 real live client scenarios where I changed their titles. Okay, I mean their names. So what I'm going to ask you, so you can be listening for, is that who had less interviews, which means that they got hired faster because they interviewed more effectively. Who got hired faster? So one of these people was getting a lot of leads. Remember Metha's story, a lot of leads, but they weren't getting hired. The other person had just a few leads, and then they got hired. Okay, so Frank or Maria. So Frank, when I first met Frank, he's a VP of customer experience. Okay, I'm a very warm, friendly, genuine, direct communicator. And when he told me his stories, I'm like, gosh, this guy has like awesome, awesome experience. Okay. So that's for Frank. When I met Maria, okay, my first couple meetings with her is like when you asked her to tell a story, she told it in 5 minutes. I was like, oh my God. She's not authentic. She was giving me the chat GPT answer to every bullet point on the job description. I could tell it was not her words. And then also she was English as a second language. Okay, so that was very clear that English was her second language. Okay, so this may be a trick question. So I worked with both of them, okay, on interviewing and how to do interviewing. One person, I had like 6 or 7 interview sessions, like practicing, and one I had 2 or 3. Who do you think got hired faster? Okay, tell me now in the chat, Maria or Frank? It's Maria. Maria. Okay, it was Maria, and I'm going to tell you the difference. So Frank wasn't learning. Okay, so one of the things that you will find out when you don't practice with a professional, and I saw somebody in there say they use chat GPT, okay, or they use an AI tool. I interviewed 20,000 people, okay? And my advice is not in chat GPT, just so you know. But the Maria got the job much faster. She had less interviews and got hired because I trained both of them the same methodology. Frank wasn't learning from the process, and Maria was. So when I told Maria, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this, you need to correct this, she went away, corrected it, and she was interviewing better. Okay. Frank was really not being authentic. So what happened when I told you he was genuine and friendly and very warm when I met with him and he had great examples, he was doing what I did in the interview. He was freezing up. He was becoming somebody else in the interview. And what happens when you're doing an interview is you really can't get that real-time feedback. You can maybe get it from a chat bot. I'm not saying that, or working for me, but they're not going to give you the honest truth. They may not give you any feedback. So we have to have a mechanism or a way to measure how you're doing. Okay, so what is this? Maria said she was probably cheaper. What does that mean? I don't
People
know.
tend to pay women less.
Budgeting.
Oh, by
Budgeting.
the way, oh gosh, oh, here's the thing. No, she makes 30% more than he does when she got
Okay,
it.
well, that's a context I didn't have.
Yes, yes. So
Because I'm
that's
saying, what I said
in there,
after
it's-
that, what I said after that was there are constraints in the hiring process you do not know about, and you will not know about even after you're hired. I found out about them by chatting with my boss, because she was very open and very clear about what was happening in the organization, so that we were all up to date. So I
sure.
found out later what the constraints were and what her constraints were. You will not find them out, chances are. So be aware that it may not be you. It may have nothing to do with you or how you interviewed or your background or even your salary requirements. It may have something to do with the constraints they're under. And the constraints are changing. Even this year compared to last year, looking for a job, the constraints are different. So be aware of all that, the environment, the economy, the pressures, the political talking points, the company culture, everything bears upon who gets hired. And bottom line is you might not have just clicked with the interviewer. So even that, personality. So the constraints are there. Just be aware that they're there. And as Martha, as you were saying, do the best that you can, given everything that we're teaching you. And I'm learning every single time I'm in one of these, and I've been in these before. So every single time I learn something new. So keep your ears open, learn whatever you can, but be aware that forces are out there beyond our control. I wish they were under my control, but Alas, thank you.
Thank you. Very good point. You are right. We can only work to improve ourselves, and we don't know what's behind the magic curtain. Okay. I tell people that I know what was behind the curtain a lot because I know why jobs got closed. I know why they reorged. I know why they purchased a company. I know that this manager played favorites. All of that stuff happens. Okay. So you are right, Marina. All we can do is try to make ourselves better so that we can get the best chances that we can get. Okay. Steve Bauer says, how can your social media footprint derail you? I'm not going to go into that, Frank. You or Stephen, you can definitely schedule a meeting with me. I'll tell you how to do that, but not being careful about your privacy settings. Okay. All right. So we're back to my original story. Okay. So in the chat, we're almost finished. In the chat, please tell me what your takeaways have been today. What have you learned today? Like Metha's telling you the muddy waters that she stepped in and why her job search was 13 months long. What did you learn? Anyone? Nobody learned anything today? Okay. Be patient, consistent. Metha's not patient. Be patient, consistent, and continue growing in the process. Practice interviewing. Interviewing isn't based on vibes. Okay. Applicant asking, not too many years. Okay. What about the importance of applicant asking questions? I'm not going to go into that, but generally only ask questions relevant to the job and the organization. Not about yourself in an employer's market, because they don't really want to care about your questions like, what are your benefits? What is your PTO? Okay. Look objectively at your behaviors. You may not be able to determine why you're derailing yourself. Right. Okay. While screening interview may seem routine in a box, it's much larger than impact on moving forward than you might think. Okay. Not benefits, etc. about the job itself. Oh, excellent. Okay. All right. I think we're on the home stretch here. Okay. So here's your call to action. I told you would have some takeaways today. First of all, you can take a picture of this slide. Concise. So somebody else said tracking and concise. Okay. So you can book a meeting with me if you want. That takes you straight to my calendar. And it doesn't cost anything to meet with me. I meet with people all day long. This is all my contact details, my email, my website. If you like, I love my name because if you go in the search bar of LinkedIn, there's only one Metha Vasquez. Just type in Metha Vasquez. There's only one. Okay. So your takeaways. Okay. Assess the effectiveness of your job search. I gave you the metrics. Measure yourself. I saw many of you already have a tracking system to see how you're doing, but you need to constantly, like every couple of weeks, assess how effective your job search is. Okay. And is it progressing the way you need to? You need to decide if you need additional one-on-one support. Like in my story, I told you that after 4 months in, I was like, I started reaching for support. Remember that when I told you I reached out to my executive coach? So I wonder if I had realized that earlier, would I have not blown through a year of savings? Would I have not settled for a job if I decided that maybe I needed one-on-one support earlier? And if you think that you can't pay for it, let me explain it this way. So if you make $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month, $15,000 a month, okay, every month that you delay deciding if you need one-on-one help is $5,000 you don't have, okay, $10,000. So when you're counting on that money, then it's a chicken and egg thing. Like, oh, I can't afford help because I now have been 6 months without a job. I would tell you that at any one point, 30 to 40% of the people hire me are 6 months unemployed when they're like, oh my God, something's not working. So don't think you can't hire somebody and when I told you about assumptions, don't make that assumption, okay? Practice your derailer answers. You took a picture of the derailer, so practice those answers, going back to, you're right. Not everybody makes $5,000 a month, but that's a $60,000 a year job. So I'm not thinking that the 35 of you, most of you make at least $60,000 a year. That's $5,000 a month. Okay. So that's what you need to think about, is how many months that you're going to go without that. And then are there other ways to get income while you're looking for your regular full-time job? And then practice your derailers. And then if you have somebody else I could speak to, if you think there's another group, you're a part of another organization, I don't know what happened to my screen, then I'm glad to do that. So I don't have anything else, Kathy. I thank you so many. We have so many people here. I really appreciate it. Do you need anything else from me?
I don't think so. We did have several people who asked questions about why did you leave your last job, or why has it been so long since you worked, or something about that separation from your last job sort of thing.
Yes.
Uh,
Okay. Okay. So that's number 2. Thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up. That's number 2. So why are you on the market? It's going to be asked again, Kathy, 5 or 6 different ways. Why have you been unemployed so long? Why are you looking for a job? Why did you leave your last job? That's the same question. That ding, 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 you got to remember. So you need to have a very concise, honest answer to that. Now, I mean, like, don't wait, because that's, as a recruiter or a hiring manager or a staffing firm, that's going to be the first thing I ask. So my coaching is typically to tell people the truth. Okay. So if you got fired, okay, and I'm going to give you a couple scenarios, and then feel free, anybody can meet with me one-on-one. If you got fired, I would say 10 to 15% of my clients have been fired. Okay. I mean, flat out fired. Okay. And call me and like, how am I going to interview? So in that example, you can say, well, I've worked there for 5 years, and I'm being truthful, and the leadership changed and things were done a lot differently, and it really wasn't the place for me anymore. That's a true story. That's a true story. So you have to be able to say that. If you've been I'll give one more example. If you've been unemployed for a long time, tell what you've been doing. I think somebody on the call said, hey, I'm taking some time to evaluate what my next job is. Just build them a timeline that says, I, left in, June, and I took a vacation, and then I took a couple months to figure out, I've been working for 20 years to figure out what I'm doing, and then decide what I want to do. And then I started applying, and then I've been actively applying ever since then. Just build them a timeline. So Kathy, does that help a little bit?
Yeah, no, I'm quite sure that it does. That's great. Is there anybody else that has a question? Otherwise, you're going to reach out to Metha, individually. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great stuff. And anyway, I'm glad that you're on our side now, and helping job seekers. So nice that you defected and came over to our side. It's
right.
nice to have somebody of your caliber helping our team. So thank you very much. And another way that you can get Metha's assistance free of charge is to try to sign up for a SWAT team. And if you don't get on her team, we have some exceptional SWAT team leaders, and they're all fabulous. We have PhD person, we've got people who were career coaches for decades who really know what they're talking about. So, so yeah, get on a SWAT team. Talk to Shannon. Okay. Thank you so much.